Welcome to the Recovery Evolution podcast, where people in abstinent-based recovery share their strength, hope and experience, whilst also sharing the soundtrack to their lives, the music and songs that accompanied them on their life and recovery journey. Recovery Evolution, the recovery revolution. Keep an open mind.
Welcome to East Coast Recovery Radio podcast. Tonight we've got Matt on the keyboards. Not really, he's doing the sound and some introduction. And tonight, my name's Lester Morse, by the way. And tonight what we were planning on doing, we've asked a good friend of ours, Tucker, to come in. And we're trying to do this, put this show together called Recovery Soundtracks. And the idea is that, you know, people will tell us a bit about their recovery and pick some records, and then they tell us why they like that record and how it applies to their recovery and what they get from it. And then we may just have a little chat in between and just get to know Fox a bit better. And so, having said that, welcome Fox, welcome to our new little radio station.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, mate. And it might be good just to start with just telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to hand over to Matt, and who's going to introduce your first record.
Yes. So I'm 50 years old. I've been sober now for six years, and thoroughly enjoying it. Absolutely loving it. It's been a remarkable journey, is the fact of it. I run my own small business, which is something I thought I was going to have to give up. I thought I was going to have to make a lot of changes in my life, and it turns out I didn't really have to change much on the outside. I just had to make all the changes on the inside, and that was a revelation. Yeah.
And do you mind telling how long you've been in recovery for now?
I first came in, it was about 10 years ago, but it wasn't for me, so I went back out for 4 years, and it got terribly worse. So came back in 2012, and within weeks I started to get well as a result of practicing the stuff that we've been shown, and that's 6 years now that I've had the obsession removed.
Right on. Are you like a meeting goer, big booker?
Big book. I'll thump it till my hands bleed, and I get to the meetings. I try to do 3 a week because it's a big part of my recovery is trying to carry this message to the still suffering alcoholic, so I still doing the meetings, and I'll be doing them for life, frankly.
Right on, mate. Well, Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I guess let's introduce it. Let's go straight for the first song, really, because Fox has picked 4 tracks.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yes. The first one?
The first one is?
Well, it's Let Her Down Easy.
Let Her Down Easy, which turns out was written, I don't know if you know this, do you know who wrote it?
No.
Terence Trent D'Arby.
No way.
In 1993. In 1993,
wow.
Yeah. On his album Symphony or Damn. It was released by George Michael on an album called Symphonica in 2014. So why this track then?
Well, you go through that process of clearing up the carnage and the wreckage of your past, and this song's really did sum up my behaviour while I was unwell, in that I got married to somebody a lot younger than myself, and I was quite immature, so it sort of seemed to work at the time, but then you get into recovery and you look back and you're trying to straighten out that past, and realised that was not appropriate for me. There's only 15 years difference, and this song is it really sums it up beautifully. That it makes me cringe a little bit, but I thought I couldn't just not be honest about this stuff, so I'll wince.
Well, it's the theme tune to your life.
Well, not anymore, but I thought I'm not just going to sit here and play happy clappy. I'm going to get a bit honest.
Right on.
Okay, well, let's sit back and listen to this track then. Thank you, Fox.
Hi guys, thanks for listening to our podcast. We're sorry to say, due to copyright law, we cannot play the music. However, we found the combination of testimony, music and interviewing a therapeutic way for someone to share their recovery journey. We decided to carry on with the format. Sorry if you're as disappointed about the music as we are. Wow, that's the tune, and I guess we've got to say, God bless George Michael. But as I was listening to that, Fox, it brought up a lot of emotions in me, and I haven't listened to that for years, and was wondering whether you'd be interested in sort of sharing a little bit more about that time in your life and what that meant to you.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in the thick of it and sort of running on self-will, and frankly, I had all those defective characters that we come to learn about. I was very immature. I was emotionally immature, certainly very emotionally immature, and it seemed like the right idea at the age of 30-something to marry somebody who was only just 18. There was nothing felt wrong with that, and it was only when I came into recovery and sort of took a look at myself that that really brought home how emotionally immature or underdeveloped, perhaps, I was at that time. I'm a lot better today, but that song really sort of sums up a lot of my behaviours right up until I sort of came into the fellowship.
Yeah. Not going too deep with you, but do you think that started early on? Because I think part of doing these sort of podcasts, even though they're fun and music, we're hoping that it's going to show a sort of pattern for people.
Well, I have a great pattern, something I've come to understand. Just for me, I can't talk for other people. I really can, at any point in my life, pick a time, pick an age, and see how at that age, emotionally, I was it's almost a perfect calculation. I was 25% emotionally younger. So when I was 10, I had the emotional stability of a 7.5-year-old. I couldn't hang out with the 10-year-olds. They frightened me. I get to 20 and I'm running around like a 15-year-old idiot. I get to 40 and my behaviour is that of a 30-year-old. I still, got more energy than I think I have more energy than I actually have. And I really could, right up, once we'd gone through this stuff that we all try to practice, it was a revelation to me how that seemed to be true throughout my life. My mum passed when I was quite young, and I dealt with that like a 15-year-old. I really, instead of the 21-year-old. So, if you want patterns, that's the one that I can definitely identify with myself. Yeah. It's not like that anymore, and that's no, I'm behaving like a 50-year-old now.
Yeah, sometimes. Inappropriate times, probably the best way to say that.
I try not to take myself too seriously.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the sentences we use quite a lot in addiction treatment, that one of the definitions of somebody with an addiction problem is an adult that's lost or never had the ability to adjust and control their emotional states. And they tend to be sort of dragged around by external circumstances.
Yeah, I'll concur with that.
For a separation from themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just a question I've got just going on from that, really, because we're starting to touch into relationships here, and one of the things that we talk about at ECR is, and it's we haven't got any science to back this up. It came from a conversation that Lester and me had many years ago, where we both said, you know what, in our opinion, looking at ourselves and other people in relationship and in recovery, it's like 2% of the problem, if that, is alcohol and drugs. 98% of the problem is relationships. And the way I like to say it is like it's relationships with self. And so I'm leading on to the question, because I was going to go off on one then. What would you say recovery has meant to you in your personal relationships and all your relationships, like what it's done for your work relationships, your family relationships?
I'm definitely quicker to see the reality of a situation. And I find as time goes on that speed of seeing the reality of a situation comes quicker. Early on it would take me perhaps a phone call to a sponsor, maybe a bit of meditation, but they talk about it becoming a working part of the mind. So I'm very quick to see the reality of situations today. I don't suffer from that hysterical thinking that really governed the way I behaved, and it was a knife edge. It was supersonic how I could go have the seed of doubt or whatever it might be planted, and then act on it within 30 seconds and be off down the road with that in my mind. Lovely line I like from the big book is that we pause when agitated. So I'm quick to see when I'm agitated, and quite frankly, most things agitate me. Work agitates me. Friends agitate me.
I agitate me.
Yeah, that's it. So I've learned to pause as I've been instructed or shown, and what have you. And that's So my relationships with, and it isn't just people, is it? It is people, places, and things.
yeah.
I have relationships with all these external forces, and I just don't get into a jam with them anymore.
Okay, I reckon this would be a good time to move on
Go
to
into the next
second
tune.
track, wouldn't it? So your second track is, you've just changed it actually, it's God Only Knows.
Yep.
By the Beach Boys. And this was the 8th track on their 1966 album, Pet Sounds. I weren't born then.
Wow.
How old are you then?
I had 2 years before I was around.
66.
66.
England won the World Cup.
They
Is it
did win
just
the World
about
Cup.
to do again?
You reckon?
Ooh, yeah.
And that's when I was
That's
born.
controversial. that
I've
is.
got a World Cup Willie.
Okay, moving on. So, and he's got it out. So
That was a tiger in 1966. If anyone was interested.
I think it's a good time to listen to this track.
Recovery Evolution, the Recovery Revolution. Keep an open mind.
Wow, that's a different kind of song, and I think we all agree that we'd all like to be in California.
Oh, on that Harley Davidson.
Mind you, even though it's a hot day today. So, what was the significance of that song for you, Fox?
When I first came into recovery, I was shown quite quickly that I had to stop doing things that weren't good for me. And for years, music had been this morbid reflection, this self-pitying soundtrack to my existence. That's the best way to sum it up. And that sort of song would come on and I'd turn it off. I didn't want to be cheerful. But I did love, I grew up with the Beach Boys. I loved them.
Yeah.
I thought the music was fabulous. So I guess it was about a year of not listening to the radio, not listening to my iPod, because all that stuff had brought up old feelings. And one day I just happened to give it a go. I felt better. I mean, I think it was about 18 months in, to be honest with you. And I was coming across songs, and what blew me away, the very same songs that drove me into depression or morbid reflection suddenly had a new meaning. And that one there, that really rocked me. That's not a love song. That's not my love song to a girl. That's about my relationship with God. God only knows what I'd do without Him. And I felt that was really quite emotive when I first heard that. So I thought I should include that one because it's one that does reflect my reliance upon a power much greater than myself on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis.
Yeah.
But that's why I chose that.
Maybe you already answered the question, but is there anything that you could kind of put your finger on in your own mind that you noticed that what was making that change for you in sort of real terms? What?
I abandoned myself utterly to what was suggested. I was so broke, Lester. I was so broken down. I was at the end of my tether. For me, there was only a one way out, and then I was presented with this, the 12-step program, and I was told if I did this and went to the lengths that these people that were happy to show me what to do had gone to, they guaranteed I wouldn't drink. And I'd never, ever had somebody guarantee me something like that. But more importantly, I'd never believed anybody. But I did. And so it was that complete and utter abandonment, to the best of my ability, where I focused on just getting well. That was it.
Yeah, because again, I think we're sort of great believers in, if I could sum addiction up and alcoholism and the life that it brings with it in 2 words, I'd say closed mind. I know they like the word obsession, but we like the word closed mind. That your mind becomes very closed, and it was explained to me that I was living my life through a toilet roll hole. It was just become so limited, and we're not kind of sort of created for that. And coming into recovery is the opposite. It's the open mind and the beginning of, like you're saying there, the beginning of your mind opening to infinite possibilities.
Well, this is what I found so incredible. You've just mentioned open-mindedness. That was actually something that was specifically suggested to me by the person that was helping me out. He said I should practice having an open mind. I came to this stuff with all sorts of I was anti-religion. I was anti-everything, frankly. And he just suggested, why don't you try practicing having an open mind about this stuff? So he showed me how to do that, and I did see the benefits. I did. I stopped getting in the ring.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant. I could stop getting in the ring with people that I fundamentally in the past couldn't agree with.
Yeah. It's quite interesting as well, because the question I just wrote down to remind me to ask you, but you've kind of just touched upon it. You said that you came to recovery anti-religion along with many other things. And the question I just wrote down actually is like, because you talk already, I can hear you talk quite strongly about a relationship with God. And so I want to ask you, did you have any other form of, or did you have any form of conscious relationship with a higher power or God before recovery?
I do remember, but I was such a frightened child. I used to pray all the time at night. I was so afraid of losing family, pets. I was so frightened. So I had that relationship, that childish relationship with God. And I really strongly believed in God. And I don't know what it was that just switched that off in me. Mid-secondary school. Perhaps it was girls' skateboards, some music that came along and distracted me, perhaps.
That's much more higher power, isn't it?
It was at the time, So that stuff came along, but what was amazing, when I came to this stuff, so in my mid-40s, early 40s, I'd forgotten that I'd even had that relationship. And it took another 2 years. Even though I had this spiritual awakening, I still couldn't recall that. And it took a little while longer for that to filter through. And like, oh, no, I did believe in God. But it was driven by fear, those prayers.
Mm. And what about now? What's your relationship? I mean, how would you... I don't know if you want to talk about that or not.
Yeah.
What's your relationship like with this higher power?
God of your understanding.
Yeah.
The God of my understanding, it's all the promises that it talks about in the big book, where... It's all of the promises that I've been given, or I've experienced, have come as a direct result of that relationship with God. When they talk about handing my will and my life over to the care of God, I wasn't sure how to do that until somebody explained to me that actually, and this just for me, my will is my thinking, and my life is my actions. Well, I can do that. I can give my thinking over to God, and I can try to give my actions over to God. And once that started to happen, it's constant. I mean, for me, my higher power is omnipresent, all powerful, all loving, and He's there for each and every one of us if we seek Him out. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess that would lead it beautifully, actually, to Fox's third track. Talking about that, because it's from an album called Beautiful World, and it's called Shine.
Yes.
So we'll take that from 2006. So should we listen to it first?
Yes.
Let's do that.
Recovery Evolution, the recovery revolution. Keep an open mind.
So that was a very uplifting tune there from Take That. And folks wanted to put that in the context of your life at the time.
It's just uplifting. You were whistling, my foot was tapping. Yeah. It's just a great song. But I had a real change within my thinking as a result of going through what we've been shown to do, and that song just sums it up. I don't know who's singing that to me. It's certainly not the Take That Boys. It's coming from a much deeper place than that, where it tells me to hurry up. Get on with this stuff. It talks about shine. I can shine if I practice this stuff, and I find it quite encouraging. That it talks about don't let the demons get me down, and that's all those sort of lines resonate with me because those demons used to get me down. Almost all the time. Certainly daily, but not anymore. And that's a bit of a celebration of that for me. And it's just a cracking tune.
Yeah, it is, mate.
No, go on.
So I was just thinking, this saying the word demons. There's the word demon drink, I guess, comes into people's life. That's gone out of your life. If you would have any sort of things that you'd identify as demons now that could possibly sort of pull you down or pull you out, what would that be, just for the folks?
Well, it would all come as a result of stopping my daily routine of what I need to do to stay well. And, the demons would be my thinking.
Yeah.
it would be my thinking, my old thinking. Big Book talks about how, I need to let go of my old ideas. They're still there. I need to let go of them. And I've done a good enough job so far, I think, of letting them go. But I still think they hang around. I carried them with me for years.
Yeah, well, it says we're not cured. We have a daily reprieve depending on the maintenance of our spiritual, and I like to add mental condition these days, I must say.
It's interesting, because being a musician myself, and you can always tell the quality of a good song. And there's two ways I always find is, can it be played on an acoustic guitar and just sung with one person? And I've heard that done. I've been in the situation where it's been done. It sounds gorgeous. But the other way, which I really liked about Take That, was, it was very, being a kind of rock musician, it was very kind of fashionable not to Take That. But it was one of those things that you can't help it. You shut the curtains and you find yourself putting a Take That track on and kind of tapping your foot. And one of the things that I always found, and there was a band I was in that we used to do this from time to time, you'd take a particular track, and that was one of them. And that's got keyboards in, piano, and all that kind of thing. And you'd get rid of that because we don't have the band anyway. And now we'd just do it with rock guitars. And that song absolutely pumps when it's played in a rock guitar way. So it's a fantastic song.
I'd
you
like
listen
to
to the
hear
bass
that.
line, it's just that pumping bass line.
Yeah,
it really is a fantastic track.
Great.
One quick question I wanted to ask you as well, Fox. I meant to ask you a few minutes ago. Was what actually caused this? What caused your rock bottom? That moment that made you concede to having to work a recovery program in your life?
It was the 2nd of February 2012. I don't know what time I'd gone to bed the night before. I don't even remember going to bed. It was I drank to oblivion. That's the fact of it, on a daily basis. And it got to the point where my life sort of went in sort of 4-hour cycles. 4 hours awake drinking, 4 hours out, passed out. And so I didn't have a clue what time of day it was, what time of year, what day of the week, any of that stuff. And the 2nd of February, I got out, and the postman had very kindly dumped a load of colourful envelopes through my door. And I won't swear, but it was because opened a few of them up and realised today was my birthday, and I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten my birthday, and that's not as profound as it sounds. This was just another episode, but that was kind of that was at my very core. And so I found myself within minutes on my hands and knees in the hall. And I don't know where the words came from. I just said, God help me. And something started to change. And I'd had my last drink in the following April. And I was starting to get well. That was it. So that was the one for me.
It's amazing how many people in 27 years in recovery that I hear say that, they just got to that point where they just cried out from their gut almost for help, and their life began to change from that moment on. So whatever that is. Fox, to see that we've known you for a little while, we can see that you've got a lot of passion in your life and excited about your business recovery, and I know you do some great things with your life, and people talk well of you that I've talked to, and I go a lot on that. People say they don't like gossip in AA, but I love it. I depend on it. I get to know what... There's a lot of it's true, isn't it? I found so it's a good way of seeing where someone's at, and people talk well of you, even when they say that, they don't say what you say in meetings, but they say when you're in meetings, you're always uplifting and inspiring. So, for me, that's a sign of an open mind. That's a sign of somebody that has got a program and got some spirit in them, which is always good to see. So, having said that, what do you think that your sort of top tips for recovery would be? What are the things that you find probably like we was going to call this sort of a desert island disc? If you had to take sort of 3 or 4 things on an island with you and you couldn't do anything else, what say 3 or 4 things would you take with you that are most important to maintaining that recovery?
Well, it goes against the grain, but one of the things I'm absolutely convinced about is I cannot do this on my own. So I'd have to take one of you two with me, because I can't do it on my own. I have a relationship with God, and that's fabulous, and God's always with me. But sometimes I need to talk to somebody else that has experience of what we go through. So that's not doing it on my own is the number one thing. I'd definitely take the big book if we're going to go down there. I'd have to take that. That was suggested to me that I read 4 pages a day, and that was 6 years ago, and they haven't told me to stop. So I keep doing it. I'm waiting for one of them to say, "Oh, you only have to do that for a few months." But I don't know. Maybe that's what's what I'm meant to be doing. And carrying the message, practicing the principles and all my affairs, but carrying the message is vital for me. Holding out my hand and sort of, I've got a solution today to
just for the people that may not know what carrying the message means. What would that mean in 12-step terms?
Well, it means you can get well. You can get well if you're willing to take certain steps and go to the lengths that some of us found necessary. And I like to share my experience and my strength and my hope of what it was like for me before, and what I touch a little bit on what I had to go through. Well, you can't do that in a meeting, really. I haven't got enough time. And what it's like now. And it's amazing now. It was crap before. I was shown what I had to do. I do it, and now it's amazing. So I like to go. It was given to me. It was given to me in such a way that it was made clear that I need to give it away as well. And that's why I keep going to meetings. That's been a long time since I've been to a meeting because I needed a meeting. I go now because other people, there are still suffering people out there, and there's a solution.
And if I could just go back to the first thing you said there, you mentioned in these recovery tips about not doing this on your own. And that turns out to be, I think, one of the most difficult things. If you look at the actual experience of people in recovery, it turns out to be one of the most difficult things for people to do, to keep in contact with someone and to keep turning their kind of will over to this higher power that gets created by two or more alcoholics and addicts coming together with the purpose of recovery. So how easy or difficult did you initially find this? And what about today? Has it got easier, or do you find it more difficult?
Well, when the route I went through, they call it primary purpose. I don't know how much different it is to anything else, but that was made very clear to me that one of the requirements was I phone my sponsor every day. Well, I've never phoned anybody every day, so for 18 months at the same time every day, I phoned him, and it started off with me just ranting and raving about how crap stuff was. But he would sort of just share his experience of what he had to do to get through that kind of day. And I started to get well. And I started to get well quite quickly because it was that daily call. It was that daily call. I would do my inventory with him. So for me, I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yes, it did somewhat. And just, what about now? Is it something that you find really easy to do now? To just ring someone up if you're going through a hard time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's degrees, isn't it? I'm a lot weller than I was before, and sometimes I did find myself phoning him and almost making up stuff because life was all right. And then he told me, he said it's okay to say everything's okay. Well, I said it's okay for today, thanks. Today, it's changed a little in that it was best summed up like this. He said, give it to God. If you don't give it to God quick enough, call me. And I love that. Yeah. And for 2 years, 3 years, I'd phone him and I'd start the call with, I didn't give it to God quick enough. And he'd go, all right, how can I help, type of thing. That doesn't happen anymore. I give it to God first, and often don't need then to go and get a second opinion as such. But that's not to say we don't face certain things that are new or troubling, and that I will pick up the phone because I know it works. I don't just get honest with somebody and say, look, I'm frightened of this, or this has happened, or actually I don't know what to do about this.
Yeah. See, I've always done that in my recovery. Probably relied on that more than anything else, is sort of phoning other people up. But that seems a very difficult thing for a lot of people to do. Do you sort of experience that with other people, that they just find it hard to speak to somebody? They don't seem to get that idea that when one alcoholic talks to another with the purpose of recovery, it kind of opens that closed mind again, and you get that relief that you're looking for.
Yeah, I do. And I have to remember that it didn't come naturally to me either. But he would sort of tease things out of me. He'd often sort of say, did you want to kill anybody today? I go, well, no. He'd go, it's a good day then. Little things like that,
I had a day like that once.
I didn't want to kill anyone, yeah.
Back in 1972 it was.
Did you yell at anybody? Are you angry at anybody? He sort of coaxed these things out of me, and he'd always start with saying, how's your day? And I would just sort of explain what had gone on, and then I'd find myself 2 or 3 minutes later being honest and saying, well, actually, this bloke in the XYZ car did this, and he would then show me, what he had to do to cope with this. And I'd start practicing it. I wanted what he had. And he was, I think my record was 7 calls in one day to him. That was a particularly stressful day early on. But he never didn't answer. He just said, yeah, what's going on? And I explained. And
that was when the council tax come in, was it? Something like that.
It was something else, to be honest. It involved people and where I worked at the time. So he got me through that.
And it shows great strength. I remember when I met Lester, it was about 12 years ago now, so he'd been in recovery around about 15 years at that time. And one of the things that I found quite strong, but so strong, was the humility in this respect, that when Lester and me started to become, quite early on as well, when we started to become friends, he would ring me up and run problems by me, and it was quite a revelation to me, really, because so I didn't even enter really looking at the 12-step until about 12 years ago, and to kind of have this humbling experience where a guy is in recovery 15 years, and I know I certainly weren't the only one who was ringing. He already had a handful of other people that he would ring and trust himself with. But to have phone calls regularly, I remember, I don't know if Lester can remember this, I'd probably only be friends with him for a couple of months maybe. I remember he must have been travelling down to London or something, and he rang me up and he said, I just need to rant. Have you seen the petrol prices? And we ended up having a conversation for about 10 minutes, I think. And it wasn't about the petrol prices. That was just the opening kind of line to actually for him to be able to talk. But I guess what I just want to say to everyone listening is, being in recovery for so long now, I know we're all sitting here and we can appreciate this. I've come to see that it's one of the most difficult things for people to do, to pick that phone up and get humble to someone. And I just want to actually say out there that it's such a strength. And when you see that in action and when you take part in that, you can't deny the power of when 2 or more alcoholics addicts come together with the purpose of recovery. So I just want to put that out there because I know people find that really difficult.
I think one of the barriers for me when I started making those calls, so I'm conscious of this when I'm trying to help people with this stuff, is I didn't want to tell him stuff because I was frightened he would tell others. And he had to go out of his way and say, everything you say to me is completely confidential. I don't discuss it with my sponsor. I don't discuss it with my wife, my partner. I think that was a big barrier. And once he sort of cleared that up for me, and I think it needs to be said, I need to be led by the nose here. Look, I don't talk about your stuff to anybody else. This is between you, me, and God. He went on to say once that this is between you and God. I'm just the witness. Oh, lovely. That made a difference.
Yeah. I guess it's important also to find somebody that's sort of, like that, where one alcoholic talks to another with the purpose of recovery. Yeah. Is an important ingredient in that you do that. They're going to talk you off the ledge. I mean, like Matt was saying there, it reminded me, I went to a Joe and Charlie weekend in Scarborough. I can't remember when, it was quite a few years ago. Took a load of sponsees with us in. One of the guys was black cab drivers. They're all in the back of this black cab. And we're bombing down the motorway. Coming back from this Joe and Charlie weekend, which was fantastic. Pulled into, they said, so I was telling them all about the programme, what we were doing. They were all fired up, and we said we'd pull into this service station and have a cup of tea and something to eat. And so we pulled in the service station. As we started pulling in, I noticed myself starting to change. And it was a similar thing to that. It was like I was so resentful at the prices in. Just this resentment started coming on me. I got darker and darker. They all went off to to go and buy their food. I had to go in the toilet because I'm envisioning throwing chairs through windows in the service station. And I'm in the toilet praying for relief, to save me from smashing up this service station. And I come out and I said to them, quite to go in the toilet and pray. I said, I got a proper resentment. And they're like, no shit. They're like, man, the way you changed was amazing. But again, it's just realising how that stuff's just poison. Poison. And again, you just don't know when it's going to come on you. And my sponsor used to say to me, look, if it lasts longer than 15 minutes, then you need to phone someone. And, even though I could go in the toilet then like yourself and just sort of hand it over and let it go, that's not always possible without, like you say, I just couldn't always do that with everything about calling Matt, calling somebody in recovery.
Yeah.
And again, that can be quite difficult to find sometimes, the people that are not going to get in it with you.
Yes.
The ones that are going to say, come on man, you got to let that go, you got to, And, I got to then go and pay the really expensive prices and have a sandwich and a cup of tea. And have a laugh about it.
Is there anything else you want to ask, or do you want to lead on to our next track?
I think we go over the next track.
Go for our next track, which is, you must be a George Michael fan then, yeah?
Oh, I think it's awesome.
God bless him.
Yeah,
God bless
brilliant.
him. Because this is another George Michael track that I'm sure many people will recognise. It's called Older, and I think the album was called Older as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was from 1996, apparently. So let's listen to that track and then find out why you like it.
Recovery Evolution, the recovery revolution. Keep an open mind.
Dan, that George Michael's cool. He makes you feel cool to listen
Do you know what?
to it.
It makes me actually feel old. I just suddenly realised when I said 1996. And I was just listening to that and thinking, that's 22 years ago. And I remember it so clear.
Yeah, I feel cool. I feel old. But then you can feel the emotions sort of gurgling up when you listen to that one. So, so tell us a bit about why you chose that one.
Well, there's another one that was for a long time. Thanks for telling me how long, Matt. But for a long time was that soundtrack of morbidity and self-pity. And it was one of the ones that I sort of had to stop listening to. And then when I came back to it, once I got well, certainly started to get a lot better than I was, it taken on new meaning. I'd had this spiritual awakening, this vital spiritual experience that's I think is required. And that it was the same song, but it just meant different things to me. It talked about change as a stranger I'll never know. Well, sorry, Mr. Michael. Talks about how I'm not that foolish anymore. There's a lot. I don't think there's one song that can sum up a recovery, but there's lots of one-liners there that, as I hear them, I go, oh yeah. Or, oh no, I'm not that anymore. And ultimately, I guess I just have to face up to the fact that I am older.
Yeah. And what we mentioned just before we listened to that about you're a George Michael fan. What is it about George Michael's music that appeals to you?
Well, it's just cracking songs. I enjoyed Wham when they were out. In my teens.
Good days.
Yeah, it's hard to know who was the talented one between George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Do you have a vote on it?
I think I had one of those rat tails for a while to try and to try and fit in.
Pull the chicks.
That's it. And it blew me away when he left all that and went and did that Faith album.
Yeah.
And he could do this on his own. And I thought he was brilliant. Faith was great. And I remember I just passed my driving test and I took a girlfriend from where we lived in Oxfordshire up to the NEC for the Faith concert. Right at the back, cheap tickets. But it was, I think I bought a calendar.
She had to pay for them as well.
and the petrol. And that was brilliant, and that sort of began my love affair with his music, and then it just seemed to get better and better and better and better.
That's funny actually, because Faith was that track. I remember the videos to this day. That was really what turned me on to George Michael. And then of course I think the album after that was Listen Without Prejudice.
Yes.
I think, which I think today is still one of my kind of top 10 albums.
Yes,
fantastic.
That's the one I've got on my iPhone. Other streaming music services are available, but that's the one that I've bought, and then I bought the greatest hits version, and it's basically just the same. So I think I've got 3 or 4 versions of the same album because I love it. I love that music. Yeah, that's it.
And why not? We can do these things in recovery.
That's it.
That's it. We humble ourselves.
Yeah, all you need to do is go and tell the world on a podcast that you're a George Michael fan and throw in a bit of take that as well. But there we go.
All right, I think we're coming near to the end. But I've still got just one question that I think might be helpful to someone. Fox, is there anything that you sort of found difficult about recovery that may be an obstacle for people that you find that we could share a bit on and maybe remove that obstacle for someone?
I think I struggled with honesty. I'd spent a lifetime lying to myself, living in a fantasy, running from reality. So when I had to sit down and face the reality of me, that took a bit of courage, and a bit of trust in that person that I went through that process with, of being honest and going through some of the things that I'd done, and again, it's back to not doing it on our own. You know, none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for people like yourselves that are willing to give some of their time to help a wretch like me. That's the great fact of it. I guess the barrier would definitely be that being honest. And I guess the other thing is clueless. I rocked up thinking I knew everything. I really did think I was the cleverest person in the room, but I didn't know how to get over this drinking. I couldn't stop. You know, I didn't know anything about the illness. I think that was the other thing. Somebody explained to me about this being an illness and how, because I thought if I just stopped drinking, that'll be the end of it. But it turned out there was a bit more to it than that. It's good today.
Fantastic.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. Indeed.
Well, thanks a lot for coming in, folks. Really appreciate you that you're coming in and the help that you've been giving us lately. And you know, we're going to keep doing these recovery soundtrack podcasts for their East Coast Recovery radio station. And hopefully you can come in again when we do some recovery topics and have some more discussions. But it's been great, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Fox.
Thank you.
Recovery Evolution, the recovery revolution. Keep an open mind.